Good evening, gentlemen. I'm sitting in my study and दोस्तों मैं आपके साथ एक बहुत अच्छे टॉपिक पे बात करने वाला हूँ. As you know, the last century we had two world wars, and the epicenter of that was Europe. Europe was the place where the battle took place. The First World War started by Kaiser Wilhelm II, and the Second World War started by Adolf Hitler. And now, with my knowledge of history and military history and battle conditions, I have a feeling that World War III is on the anvil. And as I told you earlier, and you know about it, the first two wars, the world wars, were started by Germany, and they were the main culprits. I think World War III may also be started by Germany because the situation is coming out into such a way that the Germans now want to reassert themselves. See, it all started with Donald Trump coming to power in America. And once he came into power in America, he brought in a revolutionary change. Now, there was a battle on in Ukraine, and he was keen for a ceasefire there, and I think he's going to get it. But this is not to the liking of the European powers. That is, in particular, Britain and France. Now, these two countries are, past their best. They are on decline. They have nowhere to go, nothing to do. Their empires are lost, and there's a lot of problem in the country itself. But the French president, Macron, and the British Prime Minister are still dreaming that they'll be able to continue the war in Ukraine and beat the hell out of the Russians. They went to Washington with folded hands, met Donald Trump, but he didn't play ball, and some of them sitting there quietly now and thinking what to do. They tried to entice Germany to be part of their alliance and get involved in Ukraine, but the Germans have their own priorities, and their priorities are to dominate Europe. You will remember in 1870, the Great Bismarck attacked France in what is known as the Franco-German War, and in that, the French were reduced to penury. Paris was occupied, and the French were reduced to eating the zoo animals, like elephant and giraffe and other things. And in 1870, finally, the assault came and Paris was occupied. During the First World War, again, the Germans were at odds with the French, and the French were defeated till the front stabilized at the Battle of Marne. And in Second World War, there was a brilliant tactics, what's called Blitzkrieg, which was started by Hitler, and the French were defeated in 40 days. The Maginot Line was breached under the head of the French. An army of 5 million men said hands up. So France and England are still thinking they'll be able to dominate Europe, but now the Germans are it. Their economy is the strongest in Europe, and the Germans probably want the pound of flesh now. What makes me think that the Germans could again start World War III is the latest German act. They are going to position troops in one of the Baltic states, and they're going to have shortly 2,500 troops there. Now, if you look at the purpose of sending the troops there, you can't find anything at all. 2,500 troops is not a big number, but it's enough to provoke the Russians. And probably the Germans have made their own assessment about the Russians. And they would expect England and France to be behind the Germans, and the leadership will be with the Germans. It's not going to be an easy task, I can tell you, because the Germans don't have nuclear weapons, number one. Number two, their army is very weak at the moment, but everything could be changed. If you remember, after the 1919 Versailles Treaty, Germany was finished. But yet Hitler brought Germany back into the reckoning when he came to power with his policy in 1933. And within 4 years, he had the German military machine as the most efficient in Europe. Now that you can deny it, nobody can deny that. So what's going to happen next? I've been wondering about myself, because now the Russians and the Americans are playing ball, and the Ukrainian president has been feeling left out. Probably he'll be overthrown, sent home. And Donald Trump has got his priorities very clear. He wants peace in Ukraine. Probably he'll try to normalize relations with Russia, and then he's hoping that he'll be able to break the monolith Russian-Chinese alliance. If you look at the world map, you'll find the Russian-Chinese alliance at the moment the most formidable in the world, in the history of the world. An alliance of almost 1.5 billion people, and the Americans don't have anything to match that. The only thing they can think about is to try to entice India into it. But I hope Modi doesn't get into the trap of the Americans. Now, what about the other smaller European countries? I don't think they know what's happening. They're bewildered. Countries like Denmark, Belgium, Poland, they don't know what the hell is happening. So they're looking forward for leadership. With America having abandoned them, I think they're looking forward to Germany to stabilize the situation. Now, how could World War III come a reality? It could come a reality in case the Germans militarize, expand their army, their armament industry, which they are doing, and put in research work and make an alliance with the British and the French behind them. Now, the British and French themselves are no great shakes as a power, but if they fall in line with the Germans, perhaps they could make a formidable alliance, and that is how they'd like to take on Russia. The British and the French are very keen to do that. I don't know how keen the Germans are, but the Germans' memories can't be short. They will be remembering their massive defeats in 1944-45 during World War II, when the Red Army really swept across the plains of Europe. So now, gentlemen, the situation is very tense, the way it looks to me. By sending troops into one of the Latvian countries on the Baltic Sea, the die has been cast. This is a direct challenge to the Russians. And I don't know what's the purpose behind sending the German troops there. Because at this moment, if America is not on the side of the Western Alliance, I don't think they'll be able to stand against the Russians. I remember that Nikita Khrushchev, the first secretary of the Soviet Communist Party, in 1961 had made a statement that all I require is 5 thermonuclear bombs and England will cease to exist on the world map. I think if I remember correctly, what I've been reading is that Harold Macmillan, the British Prime Minister, was very perturbed till he was assured by Kennedy, don't worry, we do something. Well, what that something is we don't know, because now Donald Trump is going to do nothing. He's basically a businessman out to make his pound of flesh, and he's a pro-American man. He wants to make life better for the Americans, and he wants to be the first American president in the world who didn't start a war but stopped wars, and he's looking to get the Nobel Peace Prize. So his stakes are very high. I think he's fighting for a place in history. But the Germans now probably feel abandoned, just like the British and the French. But the British and the French don't have the muscle, the military power, because they are, as it is, moth-eaten states. As far as the British are concerned, they have a sizable minority population which is eating into the vitals of the British economy, thanks to the British Prime Minister, the Labour government, which is talking all the time of a pro-Islamic approach. No wonder one of the American top men had called Great Britain the home of Islam. The French are also in great trouble. They have about 8 to 10% of minority communities, and they have a number of times held the French state to ransom. The Germans are the best prepared for this. They also have a minority, but it's been controlled, and they are acting in a way which is in the benefit of Germany. Probably some of the Germans, I've been there, they do feel that the old glory, the period from 1933 to 38, were perhaps one of the best periods in German history. And just imagine if Hitler had died in 1938, he would have been hailed as one of the greatest statesmen of the world. Because at that time, Germany was dominating Europe completely. The British were cowed down, the French had been defeated, they didn't know what the hell was happening, and if Hitler had conquered off at that time, he would have been regarded as one of the great statesmen of all time in Germany. But the Almighty or the fate has got different connotations, and so he survived and led Germany to do. So the Germans are remembering those days and thinking that somebody can come. I think the new German Chancellor is thinking in those lines, and he would like to achieve his aims without fighting, I presume so, but it's not going to happen that way. The Russians have already taken, I think, offense at these troops going position in the Baltic states, and if they mount an offensive there, the question arises what the Germans are going to do. They would like to strike out deep through Ukraine into the heart of Russia. In that case, it would be a battle of great attrition, and both sides will have to ensure they don't go in for nuclear weapons, because France has already said it will give the nuclear shield to the Europeans, and France gives the nuclear shield to Germany, and Germans strike, and the French then fall in line with the British, because the British Prime Minister has already gone on record in Washington and said he'll put British boots on the ground in Ukraine. I don't think Trump liked that, and he made the remark. Do you think you'll be able to take the Russians home? Probably not. But if Germany is doing the leadership, it's possible. So one thing, let's be very clear, gentlemen. The first two world wars started by Germany, and there's a good chance World War III could also be started by Germany, but the result could be mighty different. Mighty different in the sense, Germany survived in both the wars and came back like the phoenix, the mythical bird which rose from the ashes of the dead. Well, the same thing would happen here, and Germany, in this case, there would be a little difference. There won't be any mythical bird to rise because Germany will get destroyed. I think the Russians are waiting for a chance to finish off the Germans, and the Germans will be very foolish if they really think that they're going to corner the Russian bear. So this is the position as it stands, and I think the European powers, if they don't want to be destroyed, don't want to be wiped out from the world power map, they must accept the reality that they are non-entities. And Germany will also have to forget the fact that it's got anything to say. It may have the biggest economy in Europe, and it may be having a very great tradition as a military power, but that's all past. You can't live in the past. And now, I think Germans are playing with fire. They are also very keen that the Russians are opposed in Ukraine. I've yet not been able to understand what is the actual reason that all these countries want to oppose Russia. Probably the fear psychosis is so great that they don't know what the hell is happening. But all the same, as we know, an animal in the last stages of going for this world goes round and round in circles, and this is what's happening to the Western powers. And perhaps Germany would be the catalyst that would lead to the destruction of Western Europe. I hope, gentlemen, you like my opinion on this small issue. And if you like my comments and this video, please share it with your friends. Come back for more. In the meanwhile, I'll say goodbye, God bless, and Jai Hind.